Welcome to Positive Path, a podcast ministry of Unity of San Antonio. Reverend Nina Clark, our senior minister, extends an invitation for you to join us in person on Sundays at 11 o'clock. Unity of San Antonio is a progressive spiritual community where everyone is welcome to attend and serve. We have many opportunities for you to get plugged in, including an active youth and family ministry, classes and workshops, fellowship after church, and many more fun events throughout the year. For more information, check out our website at unityofsa.org. Now, let's get into this week's message.
There's a saying that you guys have probably all heard. It's attributed to Hunter S. Thompson, and it goes like this: life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." When I first heard that quote, I was totally on board with arriving at the end of my days having wrung every drop out of life and every adventure out of living. What an exciting life that would have to be. And I think that probably, like for most of us, this quote painted for me a picture that a full life is a busy life, full to the brim, not a moment that isn't filled with doing something. Work, adventures, travel. I envisioned a slide into home base covered in dirt and sweat and the bruises of a life well lived. Work hard, play hard fits in well with our American culture of busyness. And we talk often about our overfull plates, our long work days, our crammed schedules. And we do so with a sense of pride, because we are doers. And we feel if we're not doing something, we're wasting time. And if we're not doing something, we feel restless, inadequate, like we're doing something wrong. Our work days are long, often bleeding into our evenings and weekends. And when we're not at work, there's laundry, grocery shopping, meals, house cleaning, yard work. And for those of us with children, add in after-school activities, parent-teacher conferences, all of it conspiring to keep us in constant motion until we fall into bed, exhausted, only to get up and repeat it all over again the next day. Our culture glorifies being overworked. Productivity is often equated with worthiness, and we can fall into the trap of believing that our value is in direct proportion to our busyness. We have been convinced that our overfull schedules give us greater value and are testaments to our worth. And so we keep our plates full to overflowing. And some of us keep our schedules full in order to avoid emotions that we'd rather not face. Or we feel if we don't fill every waking hour with work, we won't be able to make financial ends meet. And I know this has been true for me. I've used busyness as a way to feel a sense of worth. And I have used busyness as a way to avoid difficult feelings. And I have felt that if I didn't fill every waking hour with productive activity, that I was less than those who were more busy or productive than I. Even our vacations, which most of us think of as a time of rest, are filled to the brim with activities. We start our holiday mornings with a caffeinated beverage. We get on a bus, take that tour, go to this location, then to that location, and then we end the day with an alcoholic beverage, or 3, and call it rest. And how many of us return home from our vacation saying, we need a vacation from our vacation? Is that familiar? We return home exhausted with a mountain of laundry to do and a pile of work waiting for us that didn't get done while we were away. There's nothing wrong with vacationing like this. It's just not rest. Surrounded by this kind of cultural conditioning, it's nearly impossible to think that rest has any real value. Real rest feels indulgent. Rest feels like a luxury rather than a necessity. Rest is not what most people think it is, says Ruben Nyman, a sleep specialist and clinical assistant professor of medicine at University of Arizona's Center for Integrative Medicine. He says, people confuse rest with recreation, doing things like hiking, watching movies, gardening, reading, or even inebriation, getting high, stoned, tipsy, or drunk. Any of these activities can only be termed restful because they are a break from work. But taking a break from work does not necessarily equal rest. Alex Suyang Kimpan, in his book Rest, Why You Get More Done When You Work Less, writes, lots of people treat rest as a completely mindless or passive thing. At the end of the day, we head to happy hour. On the weekends, we go clubbing. On holiday, we travel to tropical countries where it's always happy hour and the clubs are always open. But we're discovering that rest is so important that, as Amelia Nagoski, co-author of Burnout, writes, get rest or the rest will get you. If your body has to make you feel like garbage in order to make you rest, it's going to do that. I spoke to a woman the other day who gets sick every single time she returns from vacation. I wondered, perhaps that's the only way she can get rest. About 10 years ago, rest got me. Anyone have the experience of the universe forcing you to come to a full stop? I'd been given my warning signs, a whisper here and there that something needed to change, but I was living the full life. I was making sure everyone else's needs around me were getting met. I was doing all the things, working, taking care of my aging parents, parenting, and partnering. And as you know, busyness begets busyness. And before we know it, our feet are going so fast in the hamster wheel that we feel we don't have any time to do anything but continue the race. We are Energizer bunnies, zooming around, banging our drums, heading this way and that way. Remember those commercials? And so my body literally forced me to stop. I was burning my life candle at both ends, and my Energizer battery ran dry. Because we teach that our thoughts create our world of experience, this has been misinterpreted to mean that illness is bad, that we're doing something wrong if we get sick. I don't look at it that way. After all, if Phineas Quimby, the father of New Thought teachings, if he hadn't been sick and the doctors of his time unable to cure him, he would have never been motivated to search in another direction. If Unity co-founder Myrtle Fillmore hadn't been sick with tuberculosis and also sought wholeness from another avenue because the medical community at the time couldn't offer her anything, Unity wouldn't be here. If Frederick Bales hadn't had diabetes before there was a medical cure for it, he would have never discovered the spiritual principles that led to his healing. And so I believe that it's highly possible that when we as soul are trying to express a fuller version of ourselves and we can't hear ourselves through the trappings of our limiting beliefs and the loud clamoring of the outer world, we will sit ourselves down in whatever way we can so that we have a better possibility of hearing. And that was true for me with my brick wall hard stop. I was forced to rest. And in doing so, I got in touch with some very important insights and obstacles to my own spiritual growth that changed my life for the better. But there is a better way than the brick wall method. And while different researchers are calling it different things, I kind of like the phrase deliberate rest. We live in a culture that perpetuates the belief that when we have a lot going on and a lot of excitement, we're really alive. This is written by Anne LeClaire, author of Listening Below the Noise. In truth, she says, we are really alive when we can be at peace in our own skin. Isn't that kind of a 180? We are really alive when we can be at peace in our own skin. It turns out that rest is vital to our well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It turns out that rest is a spiritual power. And so, if rest is not vacations, is not about taking a break from work, is not about escapism, is not about getting more sleep at night, what is rest? Other than going to bed earlier, most of us have no clue how to rest. The truth is that rest means different things to different people. Ultimately, it refers to whatever restores or renews or reinvigorates you. Sandra Dalton Smith, in her book Sacred Rest, identifies 7 different types of rest because we can feel depleted in different areas of our lives. And those 7 types of rest are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, sensory, and creative. Sandra writes, all rest is not created equal. Much of what we consider rest fails to work because it's not restful. Shifting our activities or changing the location of where we are active is no more restful than doing those same things at home. The most effective rest occurs when we are purposely reviving the parts of our lives that we regularly deplete. Any so-called rest that does not meet this goal isn't rest. It's just more work added to the busyness. Rest is described as a time when our bodies are relatively relaxed and our mind is free to wander. We're not trying to create a to-do list or solve a problem or worry about some situation in our life. When we're able to do this, a whole different part of the brain gets lit up and new dots are connected, paving the way for new associations and inspiration without us trying to direct traffic. How many of us think that sitting and staring into space is a constructive use of our time? Hey, we've got some resting people in here. It turns out that it totally is. This is a form of rest. How many of us think that taking a walk and thinking about absolutely nothing, just taking in the trees or the plants around us, is a constructive use of our time? Yeah, good. Turns out that it totally is. And this is another form of rest. How about throwing a pot on a potter's wheel? That's rest. Relaxed body, empty mind. Anything that absorbs our attention while allowing the body to stay relatively relaxed and the mind to wander are constructive uses of our time, because this is how we rest. And it seems counterintuitive to some of us, clearly not to everybody in this room, but seems counterintuitive to some of us because we're programmed to think of idleness as an indulgence or a distraction from what we should be doing. But research is showing that pursuing random moments of unproductive time might be a lot more productive than we think. You've heard of circadian rhythms, those patterns related to the 24-hour night-day cycle and how our bodies are tuned to those. There is also another type of rhythm called an ultradian rhythm, which are patterns that occur many times throughout the day. And one of those patterns regulates natural fluctuations of activity and rest, exertion and recovery. Ernest Rossi, who's an expert on ultradian rhythms, writes that human beings are literally, biologically programmed to want to take 20-minute breaks after every 90 minutes of intense focus or activity. When we give ourselves this rest break, it gives our conscious mind a break, and it allows for the subconscious mind to make connections that can reveal new insights. But why do I say that? For me, when I am not rested, it is hard for me to feel joy. Actually, it's hard for me to feel much of anything besides tired and drained and numb. When I am not rested, insights and inspiration don't rise to the surface, and I can feel separate from life, heavy and sluggish. But when I practice intentional rest, joy bubbles to the surface quite regularly. I feel at peace, vibrant, and alive. The world around me feels alive, and I feel at one with and in love with so much of life. And I can more easily see God in the eyes of all with whom I share this amazing planet. And I have more patience. When I practice intentional rest, I hear the still small voice more readily because the noise in my head isn't so loud and all-consuming. Rest also leaves room for uncomfortable emotions to surface. It often takes us right into painful feelings of grief, shame, and rage, writes Ashley Neese, author of Permission to Rest. Until we can meet ourselves in the discomfort that surfaces when we rest, we will continue resisting the medicine that we so desperately need, she continues. And this is relevant to our spiritual growth, for as we've talked about before, these feelings need to complete their cycle in order to release the bound energy that they hold. These feelings are between us and a fuller revelation of our spiritual nature. Deliberate rest allows us to set a trap for spiritual insight. We can't force insights, but we can set the table and make the invitation by being rested. And these insights might be about the next step in our spiritual unfoldment, a divine inspiration, if you will, or they might be an insight about a place that we're stuck, and that clarity allows us to integrate or release that old pattern so that we're free to expand and reveal more of our divine identity. Sandra Dalton Smith writes, "Sleep is solely a physical activity. Rest, however, penetrates into the spiritual. Rest sneaks peace into the daily storms of your body, mind, and spirit. Rest is what makes sleep sweet." Yeshua ben Joseph taught us the importance of rest as a spiritual power. In Mark 6:31, he tells his disciples, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." Rest is also an act of faith. It requires us to trust that we do not have to hold everything together by our own efforts. How often do we push ourselves to exhaustion, believing that if we stop, everything will fall apart? Yet when we look at nature, we see that rest is built into the divine order. Trees have seasons of dormancy before they bloom again. The ocean has moments of stillness between each wave. Even our breath has a rhythm. We inhale, pause. Exhale, pause. When we rest, we affirm that we trust the divine flow of life. We acknowledge that we're not solely responsible for making everything happen. We surrender to a greater wisdom that is always guiding, supporting, and sustaining us. Deliberate rest allows us to create the environment for inspiration to occur, and it can help us to avoid the brick wall method. So how might we ignite the spiritual power of rest in our daily lives? Here's a few simple ways. Create sacred pauses throughout your day. Every 90 minutes, if you're able, even taking just 5 minutes to relax and let your mind wander. Let your mind wander can make a difference. Maybe at the end of your workday, rather than turning on the television, take 5 to 20 minutes to sit outside in nature or take a walk, allowing your mind and your body to decompress and your thoughts to just meander. Listen to your body. When you feel fatigued or overwhelmed or uninspired, honor those signals. They are divine invitations to rest and renew. If you're one to unwind with an alcoholic beverage at the end of the day, before you do, take 10 minutes to just zone out. Don't think about your day or what you have to do in the evening. Just rest for 10 minutes. And don't tell yourself that you don't have the time to rest. You do. They're also showing that when we rest throughout the day, we are actually more productive in the hours that we do work. And when we don't rest, we start lagging and things take longer and longer and longer to complete. So in spite of what our American culture tells us, rest is not a luxury. It's a sacred necessity. And when we allow ourselves to rest, we're not being lazy. We're being wise by aligning with the divine rhythm of life, making space for Spirit to work in and through us. So I invite you to give it a try over the next month. Give yourself permission to rest and notice what happens. Trust that as you rest, you are paving the way for insights and a deeper feeling of wholeness and peace. And I do think this plays back into the original quote. We can live that full life, and I think it will be richer if we give ourselves periods of rest while we're sliding into home base.
Thank you for listening today. I want to invite you to check out our Positive Path meditations. You can take a listen anytime you need to recenter and realign. Have a wonderful day.